Hello, everyone. I'm the Bodacious Cowboy with my co host, Christy Knichel. Are you ready for a special edition of the Storytelling Chronicles? We are. Let's go.
Look out! Pop, pop, it's showtime. 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 Guess who's back again? Oh, they don't know. Gone time. Oh, they don't know. Gone time. I bet they know as soon as we walk in. Showed up. I'm wearing Cuban links. Yeah. Designer mix. Yeah. Inglewood's finest shoes. Whoop, whoop. Don't look too hard, might hurt yourself. Known to give the color red the blues.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Storytelling Chronicles, empowering women into logistics. Both Christy Knichel and myself have a fantastic guest who's going to be joining us. Let's bring in Christy. Hey, Christy, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I am doing hunky-dory. Had a good weekend. How about yourself?
Same here. Got a lot of cleaning done at the house and catching up on some work.
Yep. Well, we have a good guest that's going to be joining us in a minute. You know him. I just met him. You know what? Let's bring him in now. Kevin Nolan. Hey, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing well. Happy Monday to everybody.
Yes, absolutely. So for those who don't know who Kevin Nolan is, please introduce yourself and tell everybody about your companies as well, sir.
Yeah, hey, my name is Kevin Nolan. I'm a freight broker originally, started my career at Robinson, then started my own freight brokerage in 2005, as well as founded a factoring company, OTR Solutions, an insurance business, Marquee Insurance Group, payments business. And I also have a family office, Soap Creek, that invests in growing entrepreneurs. But everything I do is, pretty much logistics focused, and excited to be here.
Yes, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day because you probably have many busy days owning all the companies that you do.
I appreciate you taking me out of my busy day, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes when you're in that role, it's kind of like I need a break, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We got 2 board meetings this week, so this is a nice, little break to come in and chat about something that's pretty important to you guys as well as myself.
Yes, sir. And you know what? Since the Equal Pay Act of 1963 that followed up with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and then we get into Title VII shortly thereafter, we've come a long way, but we still have a huge gap and a void, and there's still disparity in what women make compared to men. And I did a little analysis and dug into it. And currently, women make 86 cents compared to $1 a man makes. And then if you look into C-level positions, directors, VPs, you name it up there, women only account for about 32.9% of all those positions. They used to be up there around 42, but this past year they dropped 10% down. And then also women of color only represent 8.8% of the women in those C-level positions. What are your thoughts on that, Kevin?
Look, I mean, we have a lot of work to do. We've come a long way, as you said. I live in Atlanta, and I would say the most powerful person in logistics in the Southeast is the CEO of UPS. And there's, a great leader in there, a female leader. They've done a good job here in Atlanta of representing and pushing through. But I would even say, the majority of logistics companies out there are small, right? The majority of trucking companies, the majority of brokers, the majority of trade, whatever it is, probably 10 employees or less.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those probably don't have any female employees at all. So like my first, comment and question, would be to the men and women out, no, not women, but the men out there that have started a brokerage or have started a trucking company in the last few years. Do you have any females in your company? And if you don't, I promise you're making a mistake. our best, a lot, not, I mean, a lot of our best employees are females. We went through the Rhino of the Year this year, and for the first time ever at OTR, there were no females, right? And we were like, holy smokes. But we had already given them all away the years before.
Mm.
So, to me, in my businesses, it took me probably till employee like 15 or 16 to actually hire my first female in. And now they're in the C suite in my companies, as well as, best for sure carrier sales reps, for sure best account managers, brokers, CFOs to COOs. It's incredible what's happening, but we still have a long way to come. But I've said it before. When I got into logistics, freight looked like the Hockey Hall of Fame, right? It was 5'10" to 6'2" white guys, right? And that's changed a lot over the last 25 years, and it will continue to change more and more as more schools get more logistics programs in there, and as logistics becomes a better job. Females are also very smart, right? So logistics has not been, on the shipper side, I think has been ahead of the game compared to the 3PLs and the assets, but we're getting better. We're getting better and better, but we've got a lot of work to do.
Well, with that being said, Kevin, can you talk about some of the things that you've done over the years or even more recently? Because we all know this, like in the type of business even you have in the brokerage, there are a lot of young men. So what are some things that you're doing from the male standpoint to bring more women into the industry or within your companies that make them feel more comfortable or a part of the team?
Look, a lot of it has to do with what will work, specifically on the outbound calling or the dealing with of, the day to day of logistics in the businesses, right? And so a lot of it is the background, right? And so if a man or woman grew up playing sports or were heavily involved in, so we try to identify first and foremost the either, whatever or whatever sex they are, their background, is it going to work in the model and in the business that we work in, right? Because we're heavy competitive business, right? We post our numbers on the wall every day, right? And so leaders in the clubhouse are men and women. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't really treat men and women that different, right? I mean, there are females that will tell you that I give it to them just as hard or harder than women. That was hard for me at first, right? That was very hard for me at first, but now it's not. And maybe that's because I'm been married for 24 years and have 3 daughters, but I would just say that,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
females don't want to be treated with kids gloves, and they don't want to be treated any different, right? Like that's to
yes.
me like the first, so
And I think the biggest point, though, Kevin, is the fact that you treat them the same.
Yeah.
That's the biggest, I think, takeaway from that. Because again, you shouldn't treat them different. I mean, I totally agree with you. I think it's about seeing what the value comes from either side. To be quite honest, it's not just all about women either.
No.
Having those women within your company can certainly help with a lot of different things.
yeah, but the
Yeah.
best ones do the right things. I mean, like our best broker at NTG, right? We had a function at a Braves game, right? She came up to me, made sure I knew who she was, right? At that function, right? Like looked me in the eye, shook my hand, right? Like, thanked me. It's just you just have to notice like who does the right things, no matter
Right.
man or woman, right? Whoever's doing the right things and is on the bus, they'll do it.
Yep.
And but from a standpoint of with the men and how they interact with the females and how they work, it's a delicate dance, right? And there's always going to be issues, right? And you have to learn, right? You have to learn how to manage that. I'm very proud of the men and women who have gotten married that have met at my companies, right? And you gotta then move them to different departments or whatnot. But men and women who work hard day in and day out, are going to be attracted to each other, right? And so that aspect of it, right? Like you have to have clear lines in that, right? And it makes it tough, right? But you want to have both because men and women, right, have skill sets that are perfect for this industry and are needed. But we've got a lot of couples that have come out of work and right, and you just got to quite candidly, it also helps you weed out the good and the bad on who knows how to handle it the right way and who acts wrong, right?
That's
Oh
actually
yeah.
a really good point.
Yeah, you know something. I mean, what I found out 30 something years ago, race, gender, religion, political affiliation has nothing to do with the individual that you bring into the office. You have to give them the respect and what are their capabilities? What do they bring to the table? What's their value? Uh, what was their contribution to the organization as a whole? It doesn't matter if you're male or female. They represent you. You want the best of the best to be in your office doing the right things at the right time. It doesn't matter who they are. And I was fortunate enough, Kevin, that way back in the day, my mentors and coach and disciplinarians, we all had them, taught me the right way. Did I used to hang out around the water fountain and talk smack and do all that kind of stuff? Yeah, when I was stupid and I was in my 20s and didn't know any better. I think that all comes down with the proper training and what that company offers women and the policies that they put in place.
Right, and you're not going to do it right in the beginning. You're going to make mistakes on every front, right? But that's what you just can't be afraid, right? You can't be afraid to, you know, look, our GM that was in Grand Rapids, she's not with us anymore, but she managed our largest office for the longest time,
Hmm.
right? And she managed it and ran it just, like it was, her business, hired, fired, put the desk where she wanted to. It's incredible to see, what we've come from our, first hires on the female front to the positions and the that we have. It's our you know, I mean, I'm wearing my OTR curling shirt, and Fritz Owens, who runs OTR, I mean, he does an incredible job of empowering, and he's got an incredible team of females over there that will be the leaders throughout not only our business in OTR, but then we see it kind of spread out throughout the industry, kind of like, they talk about the Parcells coaching tree or coaching trees, I've seen it, where people have left NTG and then have become leaders of sales, or people are at other brokerages that are, have their hands into everything. So it's fun, and it'll just get better and better.
Yeah, and like one individual that comes to mind when you talk about empowering women into logistics is Shelley Simpson, where she started in the early 90s. I think she was a CSR or something like that. And she moved all the way up. Now she's running JB Hunt. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that when you talk about a hierarchy and having, that knowledge and that contribution and the value that she learned from mentors and coaches and disciplinarians, I'm sure, but she took it to another level and just kept on building on it and building on it and building on that. And she represents a lot of women out there, and she's always out there in the field, a lot of events, supporting the women out there and trying to help them with this narrative. And that's
She's everywhere.
she's
I
everywhere.
call it. She takes shelfies. I call it, right.
Selfies, I love it.
She takes shelfie. Let me take a shelfie.
You
But
know, the
she's
interesting
she's
thing
she's
is
incredible.
I've never met her personally. I've talked to her on LinkedIn, but that's one person in the industry because I've met a lot of these empowering women out there, but that's one that's still on my list.
Yeah,
So.
you know what? Because this is my 44th year in logistics. And back in the early 90s, I actually went to Lowell and went to the corporate office. And I remember meeting her back then, but you meet that person, they're just a person. You don't really think anything. Hi, how are you? Whatever. Would she recognize me? No, she definitely did. Wouldn't, you know. But the thing is that when you see that individual and you haven't spoken to him for a very long time, and you see that high trajectory, as I call it, from being down here and then going way up here. It's so cool to see that, and it says a lot about the company that she worked for and how she was recognized and pushed hard. Because listen, JB Hunt is a big operation, and they're tough on their people, like Snyder. I mean, Snyder National, I worked for them too, and most of them are military, so they're highly structured. They're focused, laser focused on the logistics side or on the intermodal side, on the asset sides. That's how you move the peanut forward, so to speak. And so to put a woman in that kind of position that has that mentality to push and move things in the right direction says a lot. Says a lot.
Yeah, and
JB Hunt gets it. I mean, they just get it. I
yeah,
mean, their whole brand, everything else, and she does a great job also of not only like pushing the new JB Hunt, right, from a technology perspective and intermodal just machine, but also, the old school way of what JB Hunt was founded on, right? She always pays homage to the founders and everything. She's awesome. She's a
Cheers.
great person. And I know you said you haven't met her before, but if you reach out and talk about your intermodal business and what you got going on there in Pittsburgh, I guarantee you that she would
oh
touch
yeah,
base with you.
she has responded to me before. The interesting thing is, we could utilize JB Hunt, which we do in some areas, but they're also a direct competitor too, and they set the market out there in the intermodal side. So she definitely will have a lot to teach for sure.
Well, you know something, Christy? I mean, they could be competitors, but you can still be friends.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's how
We're
you
all
learn.
competitors. We're all three of us are competitors one
Yeah,
way or another.
absolutely. But you are who you are from the stimulus that surrounds you. I believe in that. So if you got like-minded individuals that will help you to level up, those are the people you want to surround yourself with. That's what women go and listen to Shelley, because she's that type of person that's going to help you to level up. She's not the type of person, I haven't seen her in a long time, doesn't push the title. I can tell you right now, just knowing and listening to what she does and at the events, when I look at podcasts and everything, she doesn't seem like the type of person that's going to push her weight in that title. And that means a lot to the people that are underneath her.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. So like Kevin, if you were to say like in your companies, like what is the split maybe between women versus men?
I was going to ask that.
Just curious. You might not even know, but just curious.
I don't know. I should know. It's a great question. I would say OTR is probably a higher percentage than NTG. I would. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but it's a great it's a great question. I mean, I'll find out. I mean, you should. If there's anybody listening that's in HR at NTG or has an idea,
Comment.
yeah, comment. But I'd say it's the classes that we do hiring wise. You know, I, I'd say there may be 60-40, 60 men, 40% women. I'd say and NTG maybe they're a little skewed higher towards men sometimes. I'm not sure. I'm
Yeah,
not sure, but I know. Look, I also said, look, it's getting better, and we've got these people in these high roles. It's also really hard for females in this business too,
it
Oh,
is.
yeah.
right? Like I know that as well, right? Especially in the pressure cooker environments. Now that everyone's getting back to the offices, and working in those environments, right? It's a tough environment, right? And a
That's
lot of these offices and brokerage floors, right? They're not as clean as they should be, right? And they're not as tidy as they should be. And so both sides are responsible for that, right? And you got to take care of making sure that the work environment is good and the bathrooms are clean, and the what works on it. We've had to put, you know, um, mothers' rooms in all of our offices, which we think is incredible, right? We love when our men and women have children, right? And so all these things are just different from where they were in the past,
Oh yeah.
but as a father and and as a husband, like I get it. Like working, in the real world with kids is really really hard, right? And especially having to get them to daycare. My wife, with our first two kids, she worked in the daycare industry, and it was awesome. It allowed us to have benefits, which really helped me when I was starting the businesses, so I didn't have those added expenses. And so it's a tough balance act as well, right? Especially the mothers out there.
Yeah.
Sure. And it's all
Yeah.
about culture too. I mean, when you have people that come into your business, it's all about brand, image, reputation. And if you got the wrong brand and the image out there and the reputation, voices carry and they carry with a lot of weight. And you don't want your brand to be trashed or your image or your reputation as an owner, as a business. That's why it's so important to have the right policies in place in an organization, especially when a woman walks through that door to get interviewed, that she feels safe. It's a safe environment for her to walk into that she knows she's going to be treated as an equal. So, Kevin, if you know, what kind of policies, and if you don't know, I'd love to have your HRBP person come on board because we would like to know what a really good policy is for women that can be mirrored at other companies that are still kind of lost and trying to figure it out to put the best foot forward, um, to meet what I just said, to have that culture, to have that right image and the right branding to help women succeed in their business.
Yeah, look, I would. There's a few things you said there. One was you brought up HR, right? And like, I love HR. Laura, who runs HR at OTR, we actually screamed at each other a week ago, right? I mean, like but I don't get involved in the HR setting of the policies or whatnot. But she's done an incredible job of empowering, Grace, who is at OTR and is on our executive team, C-suite, is leading the board meetings on a lot of different aspects. They do a lot of things, right? And they have women's groups, and I want them to do all that. I sponsor it. We will happily pay for it. We give them dollars if they want to do things, for sure. But for me as a man, like to set that, Laura does that, right? And she does an incredible job at it. And then at TINTG, I'm not as involved in there day to day, but they've got a very robust big HR team that does a lot of work. But from the start, if I go back to like what I love, which is the hiring and training of salespeople, right, and getting them up to speed, like our classes we would bring in anywhere up to 250 people, all that would start at the same time at NTG, and we'd have them all stay in a hotel in Roswell. And this was the majority of their first or second job. So you're talking about men and women that are 22 to 28, probably, right? And then you'd have a few older men and women that were sprinkled in there, right? And the majority of those classes were like half and half, I'd say, half men, half women.
Mhm.
And that would be a training week of men and women that were we would do personality tests, and they would have competitive. A lot of them had played sports, but through those weeks we didn't treat the men and women any different, right? And they can't, like, you shouldn't, right? And we actually, um from day one, right? And but I would say there's nothing better than having that group together in that environment, right? And those days, it's changed since COVID, and we didn't get a chance to do those. So culturally, things have changed a lot. Like as the men and women get back into the offices and start working together, the gelling's a little different. And so we've done a lot. We've got to get better at doing more functions outside of work, right? Because that's where you really get to know somebody, right? You know, Blake Malone, who works for me and with me, not for me, but with me, he's my partner and everything now. Inside of work, you guys wouldn't want to spend 5 minutes with him, right? Like you want to run from him because he's not afraid of conflict and he's going to deal with the claim and he's going to deal with this. But in outside of work, what we call, vacation Blake, or, outside of work, he's the greatest guy in the world, right? So when I saw that, not that he's not a great guy in work, he's just so focused and it's all about the work and it's so good and he gets it done. But outside of work, he's somebody different. So that made me have a level of respect for him even more so. And I
Mm.
think people that when they get to see somebody's family, right, or they get to see, what somebody's doing on the outside or how they're working, it just makes it a better experience. So I would say that's one thing we've been really good at is having functions. We had Christmas party again, standing room only. Everyone brought their spouses, which was great, and so everyone got to spend time and get to see each other outside of it. So once we get back to that more and more and more, I think that's where the culture will start buzzing again.
Yeah, and I think a little bit too of what you're talking about is just setting, like respect in the way people treat each other, whether it is a man or woman within the workplace. It's, and it comes from the top. And like you said, treating everyone the same, then that means that everybody in the company should treat everyone the same. So I think that's where that starts within a company. Yes, you have values and all that kind of thing, but at the end of the day, it just comes down to respect, in my opinion.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. So just going to take a little bit of a break. I want to recognize my sponsor, Freight Validate. For those who don't know who Freight Validate is, it's a fantastic company. Dale Prax is the founder and the one that put everything together, and he works with his son, and they come up with these solutions to fight fraud, and everything starts with fraud but ends with Freight Validate. So take a peek at this.
Introducing Freight Validate, revolutionizing identity and compliance verification for shippers, brokers, and motor carriers with cutting-edge technology. Now, experience the power of voice-activated information retrieval with Siri and Alexa. Hey Siri, check Freight Validate.
Sure, what's the MC number?
387211.
The company Direct Expedite LLC is a broker and is freight validated. Company ownership has completed facial recognition verification. Basic company identity verification, risk assessment, and compliance info has been verified by freightvalidate.com. Please follow company protocols for additional safety and compliance vetting. For more information, please go to freightvalidate.com.
But that's not all. We're excited to announce our new pricing plans. You can now get individual packages for as little as $15 per month. And here's the deal. Enter promo code SIRI15 and enjoy a whopping 50% off your monthly charge. Freight Validate ensures complete access to our state-of-the-art identity and compliance verification system. Speed, accuracy, and savings all in one package. Don't miss out. Upgrade to Freight Validate today. Fraud starts with fraud. It ends with Freight Validate.
Yeah, so those who want to find out more about Freight Validate, look up Dale Prax. He's on LinkedIn every single day, always posting. He's a good friend. Check it out. Ask him any questions. He'll be more than happy to answer them. So let's get back to our main topic. So, Christy, what do you think is the best policy for a company to implement in order to get everybody on the same page? Now, I know you own your own company, so pay is not a problem. Everybody is paid equally for the same type of role. because that's what the Equal Pay Act of 1963 was based on. That if a person has a specific role, whether male or female, they'll be paid equally as long as they contribute the same. And those who change as far as giving more, then there's a justification for giving them a little bit more money than their counterpart. What are your thoughts on that? And have you had any problems with maybe males coming in, since you're very heavy on the female side?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I'm like the opposite, right? We're 70% of our staff. We have over 60 employees are women. And my COO is a male, John, and 7 of his direct reports are women. He only has 1 male direct report. So with that being said, I will say some of the things that we have done here was a lot of the women in the company and leadership have gone through leadership training with a male. And then we changed it up and brought in a woman leadership coach because I thought maybe it would bring out a different side of the women. And then my COO asked if he could get coaching with a woman leadership coach so he could better understand how to work better with women. Because I think the other part of it too is there's times where we've gone through tough things. And I said, you know, women handle things differently emotionally sometimes. Women can tend to cry more, at least in front of you and whatnot. And sometimes that can be challenging for a male to deal with. And we've had those situations here happen. So I think educating yourself and learning about how to better handle yourself and knowing how different women and men are, I think is important. So that's definitely something that we've done here that's different that, you know, I haven't heard many companies do. I'm sure there's some that have done that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's made the women feel more inclusive. And it doesn't mean they all feel better just working with another woman coach. I think it's getting the different perspectives from both sides and giving them that option, I think was something that was very valuable to do. And that woman leadership coach we actually brought in as well to work with our operations team and sales just to kind of better work together as well. And I think that my sales team thought that was interesting too, because again, you don't really see that, especially in our
No.
space. So I think those things are important, kind of like Kevin mentioned, you know, you have to have the mothering room, you know, for women that have the babies. And so yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely things that have worked for us that are different, and I think the flexibility part of it as well, because I am a mother and understanding what's important. You know, and it's not even just for women; it's for men. You know, like our maternity policy is for women and men. Just because the male didn't give birth doesn't mean he shouldn't have the same rights as a woman. But I find out in most companies that's not the case. The men don't typically get time off. Some companies, yes, but we had 2 women recently who had kids and their husbands got no time at all. So we do give the same benefits to the males here as we do the women. And again, I think that goes back to what Kevin said. It's treating everyone equally and the same, but also looking at things a little bit differently. And how can you bring, you know, that togetherness where people feel comfortable? Because again, I know I'm still, you know, 1 or maybe 2 women in a room of 60 to 100 men when I'm dealing with the railroads, and that can be intimidating. So, and I think the biggest thing is, you know, doing things that can help build up confidence specifically for women. I haven't really seen that too much in men that I've dealt with, but I think for women, when they're in that environment, and this is why I do what I do, because I think it's important for women that potentially could do roles and could move up. It's almost like some of them hold themselves back because they're afraid to challenge that. So I'm hoping, and I've heard a lot of women tell me that, you know, I'm inspiring as far as speaking about it and being open about it. And I think it starts to make them feel more confident that they can do it too. So I think that's all part of it. And just
No,
making
that's
sure
a great point, especially
Yeah.
if there's you know an advancement position that's posted and internally they can not have to if they can digitally apply for the position, right? It's like when we talk about freight, right? Like i
Mhm.
i know that brokers listen to tones and accent and this and that, and like it just takes, but with some of the digital stuff that's happening in freight brokerage, it takes that aspect out of it and it just is what it is. And then you can look at the actual merits side by side. I never thought about that aspect about, being intimidated to actually, go in and ask for the position that's open, or to say,
Yeah.
hey, I want to advance. Right.
Yeah.
And so doing that in a sense that doesn't have to be, a uncomfortable conversation, I think there's a lot to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the biggest things too, which I believe, and you'll probably agree with me on this, is what's lacking in a lot of corporations out there is emotional intelligence. They don't understand how to deal with the opposite sex emotionally, and they should implement some kind of training policy for that, because it does have to do with um, listening with intent, understanding body language, and all the above, because that's how you're going to be able to understand where they're coming from, because they act different, they do a little different things. Some will even consider it discriminatory, unfortunately, and they'll bring it up to HR. Well, why was she able to go home and pick up her kids, but I can't? And so forth and so on. I know it's a bad example, but there's a lot of that going on. What are your thoughts about emotional intelligence and how important it is in a business?
Go ahead, Kevin. You can take this one.
So I like the majority of my positions in my businesses to be revenue producing positions, right? And that takes,
I
a
measured
lot
out.
of, well, I mean, a little bit, right? The numbers don't lie, and what is measured is managed, right? And all the stuff you're talking about is like the excess stuff, right?
Yep.
And if somebody's taking advantage, right, that gets to go and hasn't like tried to figure out an alternative situation to their, childcare situation, and everyone else is there till 5 or 6 o'clock working, I understand why the man or woman that, said, hey, why does that happen every day and I get to stay here? So I understand both sides of that, right? But like when it comes to EQ, right? If you have no EQ, you're not going to be able to tell what your customers like or what your vendors like, right? And on the freight brokerage side, it's three-dimensional. You're buying, right? You're dealing with carriers. You're selling, right? You're dealing with shippers and you're winning freight, and then you're managing all of that, right? And if you don't have EQ, like you're just going to work your way out,
Yeah.
right? Everyone, I brought up the digital aspect. I'm on the negotiating aspect of it, but that's still a very small percentage. Um, but I also think that we got to get a little tougher too, right? As a not as an organization. Well, some of my organizations for sure, but just as a business, and as a whole, right? It's an epidemic of everybody wanting to run around in their pajamas, right? And like I do too. Like I'm in my joggers and I'm in my sweatshirts and whatever. But like I just think that we've got to get back to not worrying about what everybody else is doing, and doing the right things day in and day out, and that will take care of itself. But HR's had, to me, the hardest jobs in the last 100 years ever, getting everybody to have a great culture and an environment that's intense and working hard in the freight industry, then sending everyone home, figuring out how to make everybody work at home well and everything else, then have everybody come back together and jam those cultures together. And it's tough to make everybody come back to work, right? It's tough to hold all those people accountable. And then they had to hire like crazy in the freight boom, and then now they've had to manage with 1 million layoffs,
Right.
right? And then when the freight boom comes back, they're going to have to rehire, right? And then they're dealing with all the different personalities of the freight game and everything else. So, um, you know, the HR aspect of the logistics game is a very tough thing because it's big personalities.
Right.
It's a lot, and so
Yeah.
but when I get back to this tougher aspect of or whatever else it is, it's just you know, you got to be able to hold people accountable with their numbers, right? Especially on the sales side. That's the majority of what I talk about. That's my realm. That's what I know. That's the lane I like to stay in. I bring in great partners for the finance. I bring in great partners that tell me, hey, you got to back down, or you're too hard, or whatever else it is. But you know, like in this environment right now, if you are a disruption in your office, or if you're spending more time talking to HR than you are to customers, like that's a dangerous place to be right now in a cost cutting world in freight, right? So,
Right. Yeah, and I would say, like, as far as emotional intelligence, I think, again, it's not like, say, being more flexible for one over the other, but like you said too, it is about having the tougher skin and understanding where the person's coming from. But like, again, like I said with women, you tend to see more women like crying, and I'm sitting here thinking, you don't cry in logistics.
I disagree. I've seen a lot of dudes cry. I've
Yeah,
had a
you
lot
like
of
cry
dudes.
at
I've
home.
cried a lot in
You
the
know,
freight game. Are you kidding me?
that's
I look at
true.
my numbers the last few months. I'm crying a
Right,
lot.
right. I mean, it's a tough thing, but at the end of the day, too, it's like you can't be doing that at work, and I think it also puts people in other a bad situation, right? How do I handle this? How do I deal with this? But I think
I'm going
learning,
to challenge you on that, though. Like, if I see somebody cry at work, like, I actually know they care a little bit more,
yeah,
That's
right?
true.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
I don't, I mean, but it does make a situation, right? Like, where if somebody is upset and crying, right? Then the whole message is lost. Whatever you're meeting
right,
about or whatever you're talking about is done. Right?
right.
That meeting needs to end, right? And you need to revisit and come back,
I
right?
agree. I agree. So listen, I agree with you 100% because we've had a lot of times where they've cried, especially over mistakes. Like, and I appreciate that because people do care. But
yeah,
then, like you said, it's almost like, oh, where do you go from now? Like, what do you say next? Next thing you know, I'm hugging somebody, and it's like it's going to be okay. And then again, it's just some people you got to toughen them up and kind of, I think, as leaders, right, learn how to deal with those things because it doesn't mean that they're
And in those emotional moments, right? Man or woman, like table it, because it's not, that's one thing I've been trying to figure out now when I've been having conversations with people. Because I know, like, there's a lot of times where I have something on my mind and I'm going to come in so forceful. I'm not listening to anything else you're saying. My whole time in this conversation is I want to get my point across, and I want to get it across as fast and as furious as possible, right? And if I need to do that, I need to make sure you're in a listen mode too,
right.
right? Or is that even the right thing for me to be doing? But one thing I've been paying attention to when I have a conversation with somebody is, are they able to listen to what I'm saying? And in that emotional moment, right? If you're, if you're having to manage someone that's been late a lot or isn't hitting their numbers, and you're putting a target on them that, hey, you got to do this next month or you're not going to work here, right? And then tears might happen. It's like, okay, I got to stop this conversation now and then revisit this tomorrow and say, hey, look, I know we had this conversation yesterday. It was an emotional conversation. I get that, but we got to get back to it. Like, do you understand what's in front of you and has to happen?
Right.
Right. And then it's good. But like that first conversation, though, like when
Oh,
yeah, it's tough. I mean, and you got to walk away, right? Because you in that moment, as well as me as a pleaser, I might give, right? I might now in this situation say like, oh my gosh, I'll give you 2 months, right?
yes,
Or
you're right.
right.
That's what
right,
happened.
Right.
And
But
then
you
you're
know,
like, shit, what did I do?
right,
right,
right. You
right.
know
And
something?
then your ops team or your CFO is like, hey, or what's going to happen? Is this going to be, are we going to have a winner here, or is this one we're not going to have this cost anymore? Like,
Right.
well, we got 60 days instead of 30, right? And
Right.
so in that situation, when it gets emotional like that for everybody, just
Yeah.
table it,
Yeah. You know something too? We're talking about the emotions and everything. So I had this conversation many years ago. I said, you know what? Anybody that's in a leadership role in logistics actually has a PhD in psychology. They really do, because everybody that walks through your door has a different personality, and you're trying to manage everybody by, like you said earlier, Kevin, you know,
People pleasers.
who is their wife, who is their husband, how many kids, what do they enjoy after work compared to in work. You know, when you have those conversations, mixing business with pleasure, you have to remember all this kind of stuff. So you're trying to organize all this, run a business, motivate people, get them to go in the right direction. It's tough, but that's what we are. We're psychologists, you know, and we're like chameleons. We have to change. Our skin has to be tough, but we have to be able to change on a dime and adapt every single day, because in logistics, you're going to get blindsided almost every single day. And you got to look at the what ifs. And if this thing happens to come up, how are you going to respond to that event in a proactive way, not a reactive way? Because if you're reacting, the water's already over the dam and you've lost the cause. But if you can think of the possibilities, because there's a high probability in logistics it's going to happen, and you get your arms around it, things are going to work out a lot better than if you're not doing that. And I keep on preaching that all the time. And it has a lot to do with the people that work under you and how to get around that.
And I'll share the first person I ever fired, like probably, I don't know, 23 years ago. She started crying and I didn't know what to do. So I got up and I hugged her and I said, I'm sorry, but like, I don't know what else to say. Like, I mean, it was the first time, right? And I was like, oh my God, like, how did this happen? Like, because I didn't know what else to do, honestly. And like, it took a lot of time, obviously. But yeah, I still remember that to this day. Like, she just started crying because she didn't want to lose her job. And I went up and hugged her. Like, I didn't offer her to stay, though, Kevin. I did not offer her to stay.
You know, I had one of those type of situations as well when I started up the first 4PL operation in Ford Motor Company's history. And I had more women in my office than men. And I hired all of them and everything. And this one lady came in and she said, my husband doesn't want me to work here anymore. And she started crying. You know, I was like, what do you mean by that? He says, he believes that this place isn't for women, that it's a man thing. Seriously, when I say this, I mean, you talk about back in the early 2000, 2004, 2005, you know, things were a lot different back then, you know, per what Kevin said earlier. And to get around that emotionally, because she wanted to work there, but her home life was telling her husband, you can't work there. And she wanted to get up and she was late all the time. And, you know, and it was like, I had to go to arbitration in there because union and stuff like that. So, I mean,
Oh, I thought you meant for their divorce.
No. And, you know, and I had a woman that worked for me. Her husband was a pastor, you know, so multiple different personalities for sure. The best people that I could ever have hired. And the biggest thing that all of us can say is that as a mentor, coach, disciplinarian, and leader, when you can promote people or you see the people that are under you go to a higher position, and then later on in their career, they say, oh, Kevin Nolan was the one that helped me out. Oh, Christy Mitchell was the one that helped me out to get me to where it is, or even myself. That's the biggest praise, that every person who's a leader out there, that's their goal. That's their objective, to get that person in that position. And it's a wonderful feeling. It really is.
The best. The best. There's nothing better than when you see people that you hired buying homes, buying cars, getting married. There's nothing better. There's nothing better.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I talk about, like enjoying being able to provide jobs for people or careers for people that, you know, do something with it and make.
You gonna hire some more salespeople or what?
Yeah, we're working on it, trying to get through. Well, we got through last year, getting through this year.
Hire
So
some salespeople.
I have.
Always.
Listen, we have 2 salespeople that are women now on my team. Still top one of the women still top seller for us. So definitely interesting.
Look, I'm telling you, the females in the logistics game over the next 20 years will be running. I mean, this is such a young industry, right? So,
Right.
you know, deregulation happened
1980. June.
44 years ago, right? So the industry's younger than I am. And so we're gonna see it evolve, and as logistics gets more and more into good campuses, as more and more of these companies continue to grow. I mean, it'll be interesting over the next few years, right? Because I think we're gonna have less money kind of flow into the industry than we've had over the last 5 to 10 years. So, I think it'll be interesting to see. I think you're going to have less companies grow as fast than you've had the last. So, I think a lot of the men, and specifically the women that are in certain organizations that have moved up over the last few years, they have a real opportunity. As the older men and women shift out, this next generation of leaders in the logistics space, there'll be a lot of females in those roles. There
Yeah.
will,
No,
there
I think
will.
so too. I mean, like we said in the beginning, you've seen a lot of change already, and there's a lot more women. It's getting them up through the ranks and into those leadership positions too. So, I mean, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a lot of women work for me, and they're highly organized. Truck drivers as well. Listen, they can out organize any guy out there. Let me tell you. I mean, they're so precise. It's like laser precision on what they do and how they do it, and it's enlightening for the whole office when you see that, especially when you cross train people and you show them like inbound specialists or outbound specialists or claims specialists, etc. And you have a woman jump in there, and I had them write their own work instructions and process improvement plans because it was them who did it. They were in the trenches, and the women were so detail oriented on like every single keystroke, everything. I mean, it
And
was
loyal, the
Yeah.
loyalty,
loyal.
I like
It was
female
crazy.
loyalty. I mean, in this industry, outshines male loyalty by a lot. But it just, and the other thing about working with females in this industry, you lie to them once, you're done. That's
Done.
it. Like, women like quality,
Yeah,
point blank. Like, women
they
like
don't
quality.
forget.
Like, my wife can have a purse, like an expensive purse, and it's 20 years old and it looks like it's the same purse she bought. Right. And it's quality, right? And versus if she would have bought cheap purses over the last 20 years, she would have spent the same.
Right,
Right. And so you don't, and also, like, you don't embarrass a woman ever, right? Especially publicly, never, ever, right? And so if she or a female on a shipper side takes a risk on you, right, and it's a hot load and she has a lot of eyes on it, lose money on it, right? Or you will never get another load again, right? So these are things that I've learned through my relationships, a lot with my children and my wife, but a lot with the people that I work with, right? And so and in this environment, like, I used to talk all the time about how sales is like dating. I can't do it anymore, right? Like, I get HR rung up all the time, right? It's like, hey, Kev, you can't give the dating talk anymore, or whatever else on sales.
Uh-oh, someone just chimed in.
What they say, is this Laura telling me not to, or what?
No, it's
But
actually one of my sales women, Abby. She said yes, the loyalty. I was thinking it was from your company though. Shutting you down
right.
as soon as you
But
said
what
it.
I'm just saying is like, the account that works with you the first day, right, is probably going to work with a lot of people the first day, right? And so just make sure that that, like, it might take a long time. It took us a long time to get into our biggest shipper and our biggest relationship, right? And that was because the larger shippers in the world, guys, they're bigger than the biggest brokers in the world, right? Like Home Depot, Coca-Cola, Walmart, Amazon, whatever. They spend more in freight than any big broker's total, like, top line,
yep,
right? Or close to it. I don't know. Or some, I mean, but they definitely more than probably like the top 10 and beyond brokers, right? And so they're loaded with intelligent men and women, tons of really sharp women in there, right? And they like loyalty and they like relationships that are going well. And so it's going to take a tough time to get in there, but once you get in there, you're good, right? You're good for a long, long time if you do the right thing. So, like, it's okay that a sales cycle with a really good shipper might take 3 years, and that's okay, right? Because they're not going to just take, anybody in or whatever. So, just know that. And so, You know, the majority of great shipping departments in America, I believe, are run by women. There are some men out there that run some great ones as well, but there are some great women shippers that you know have are running what I believe some of the biggest logistics companies in the world.
Yes, I agree. Well, we're coming to a conclusion. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day again there, Kevin. Um, very insightful. I appreciate what you had to say. I'd love to have you back on the show at a future time if you're available, hopefully.
Maybe with your HR.
yeah,
Just
yeah, clear it
kidding.
with
No,
their
hey, you
HR.
should bring Laura on. I mean, look, I've got tons of females in the businesses that have done incredible things, and that run anything from our head of training to our top carrier sales reps to, like I said, you know, our top account reps that are brokers. Grace, that, you know, is the C level at OTR. Got Kristen and Rita and, you know, Macy and the crew at MIG. We've got them everywhere that are just making big things happen, and there are true teammates that we can't win without.
Well, I think would be interesting, since you own multiple companies, maybe bringing someone on from each company together to kind of do what each company's, what are they doing at each of your companies?
Yeah, how are they mirroring best policies, when it comes to women engagement and hiring, so forth and so on? Because maybe you have the best out there, Kevin, and you should share it for those that may not have thought of those ideas.
And then we could tell if each of us have cried in front of each other. It probably goes both ways. Probably
Right.
goes both ways.
There
Right.
you go. Right. Honesty and integrity, it's first and foremost in everything we do. So
Yeah.
if you cried and you're a guy, it's okay to say you did it.
And look, hey, for the men and women that are out there in our business right now, it stinks, right? I mean, we're in the longest downtime in the freight cycle that I've seen or been in, and the largest
Indeed.
drop in margin per load, and the biggest drop in rates for truckers, with fuel staying high. We've got a few more weeks of this, I believe. Then it will get sunny on the other side of this, but keep fighting. I know I always joke, I say we're in the coal mines down here, but we are. It's really, really tough, and it's good to talk about these things, but in a big environment like we're in a big market, hard work is really the only thing that will outbeat anyone. And so just push yourself, and then when the times get good in a few weeks, we'll all be really, really happy. But we got a few more weeks of badness. It is
Yeah.
what it is.
Just tighten up that seatbelt and go for the ride. You'll be okay on the back end if you just work hard every day.
There's
Hey,
a pot of
I was gonna say, we're starting to see the intermodal come up a little bit, which means truck
True.
rates are starting to go up a little bit.
There
So
you go. There you go. All right,
yeah, but
guys.
then you'll see that, and then the next week you'll be like, oh, it's back to slow. So
right.
it's going to be choppy before it gets better, but it will start moving in a linear line. So,
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys. We'll talk soon. Enjoy the rest of your week, Kevin. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
all right. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you,
Bye.
Kevin.
Bye.